took the job because I was running. Not from the law or anything dramatic like that, just from everything else. Life, I guess. The endless loop of bills and bad dates and beers that stopped working their magic around 2 a.m. The chopper set down hard on the ice, rotors still churning up snow as I hunched my way out the side door. Antarctica hit me like a slap. -40, they'd said at the briefing, but numbers don't prepare you for how cold actually feels at the bottom of the world. My breath crystallized instantly, little ice needles forming in my nostrils. "Stark!" A woman in a heavy red parka was waving at me from the entrance of what had to be Whitmore Station, just a squat, gray building huddled against the endless white. Nothing much to look at, but it was home for the next 6 months. I grabbed my duffel and trudged through the snow toward her. Each step sank halfway to my knee, the cold already working through my supposedly polar-grade boots. "Welcome to the ass end of nowhere," she had to shout over the helicopter. "I'm Duncan, station commander." I nodded, not wanting to open my mouth in that wind. She punched a code into the door panel and pushed inside. The heavy metal door closed behind us with a solid thunk, cutting off the roar of the chopper. "Clay Stark," I said, pulling off my gloves to shake her hand. "Night shift. Daisy Duncan." Her handshake was quick and firm. "Let's get you settled while we've still got daylight." The station was warmer than outside, but that wasn't saying much. Maybe 50 degrees, and I could see my breath in the hallway. Duncan didn't seem to notice as she walked briskly ahead of me. "You're replacing David Chen," she said over her shoulder. "Been briefed on what happened?" "Just that he left his post," I said. "They didn't give me details." She snorted. "That's one way of putting it. He disappeared 3 weeks ago. Left everything behind. Clothes, personal items, even his satellite phone. Search teams found nothing. That wasn't in my briefing." I adjusted my duffel on my shoulder, suddenly aware of how quiet the station was, except for the hum of equipment and our footsteps on the metal floor. "They think he walked out during a storm?" I asked. "If he did, he's under 20 feet of ice by now." Duncan stopped at a door marked Control Room. "This is where you'll spend most of your time." She pushed it open to reveal a room about 20 feet square, filled with monitoring equipment, screens, and a desk with 3 chairs. One wall was lined with weather instruments, another with communications gear. "Basic duties are simple," she said, moving to the main console. "Monitor instruments, log hourly readings, maintain radio contact with McMurdo every 6 hours during your shift. That's 2100, 0300, and 0900. Don't miss check-ins. They'll send a rescue party if they don't hear from us, and nobody wants to fly in the dark if they don't have to." I nodded, taking it all in. The station felt older than I'd expected. Analog gauges mixed with digital readouts, and what looked like equipment from 3 different decades patched together. "Where's the rest of the crew?" I asked. "There isn't one. Just you and me, and we work opposite shifts. I handle days, you handle nights. We overlap for an hour at shift change, but otherwise, you're on your own." She checked her watch. "Supply chopper's waiting. I need to finish the exchange and get back to work." She led me quickly through the rest of the station. Kitchen, bathroom, my quarters, storage. Everything was utilitarian, built for function in a place where comfort was an afterthought. The tour took less than 10 minutes. "Any questions before I go?" she asked as we returned to the main entrance. I had about 100, but I settled on the most immediate. "What happened to Chen?" "Really?" Duncan's expression hardened. "Official report says he likely suffered from isolation psychosis and wandered out during a storm. Happens sometimes down here. The darkness gets to people." "And unofficially?" "Unofficially?" She zipped her parka. "Chen was experienced. 4 winters at different stations. Not the type to crack, but his logs got strange the last few weeks. Rambling about noises, visitors." She shrugged. "Like I said, the darkness gets to people." With that, she was gone, heading back to the chopper. I watched through the small window as it lifted off, becoming smaller against the vast white landscape until it disappeared completely. And then I was alone. I spent the next hour unpacking in my quarters, a room barely large enough for a bed, desk, and small closet. The walls were bare metal, painted institutional green decades ago. I hung up my clothes, put my few books on the shelf, and set a photo of my sister on the desk. Not much to show for 35 years of life. After unpacking, I decided to explore the station more thoroughly. The hallways were narrow, the ceiling low enough that I had to duck under pipes in some sections. Everything had the feel of a submarine, compact, functional, with no wasted space. The kitchen was small but well stocked with frozen and canned goods. The bathroom had a shower with a 2-minute timer to conserve water. I ended up back in the control room, drawn to the bank of monitors that showed feeds from exterior cameras. Nothing but snow and darkness in most of them. One showed the supply shed about 50 yards from the main building, connected by a covered walkway. Another showed what looked like an emergency shelter, just a small hut with a red light above the door. The control desk had 3 chairs, though only one showed signs of use. I sat in it, feeling the worn cushion conform to my body. The main computer was already on, displaying weather data in neat columns. Barometric pressure, wind speed, temperature, humidity. All the things I'd be logging every hour for the next 6 months. I opened a few drawers, looking for the operations manual. The top drawer contained pens, a stapler, some paper clips, normal office supplies. The second drawer had technical manuals for the equipment. The bottom drawer was empty except for a folded piece of paper tucked in the back corner. I almost missed it. Just a crumpled sheet that looked like it had been shoved there and forgotten. I pulled it out and unfolded it on the desk. The handwriting was tight and precise, written in black ink. Rules. 1. Never answer the phone between midnight and 3 a.m. 2. Lock your door at midnight. 3. If you see a man on the security cameras, watch him until he leaves. 4. Trust the blizzards. 5. Stay awake during your shift. I stared at the paper, reading it again. Had to be Chen's. Some joke for the new guy? Or the ramblings of someone coming unhinged from isolation? Trust the blizzards. What the hell did that even mean? I snorted and crumpled the paper back up. Isolation psychosis, like Duncan had said. Chen probably wrote this in his final days before wandering out into the snow. I tossed the ball of paper into the trash bin beside the desk and turned my attention to the actual operations manual. The next few nights passed quietly as I settled into my routine. I'd wake up around 7 in the evening, eat something, and relieve Duncan at 8. Then I'd have the station to myself until 8 the next morning. The work wasn't hard, just monitoring systems and logging data. Between hourly checks, I read or watched movies I'd downloaded before coming. At first, I jumped at every creak and groan of the station settling, but by the 3rd night, I'd gotten used to the sounds. The howl of the wind outside, the hum of the heaters, the occasional ping of the metal structure contracting in the cold. Just me and the instruments in our little bubble at the bottom of the world. I'd been at Whitmore Station long enough to have a routine. Wake up around 7 p.m., eat whatever passed for dinner, then settle in for my shift. By night 4, I was starting to feel like I had a handle on things. Not comfortable exactly. Nothing's comfortable when you're sitting in a metal box at the bottom of the world, but settled, like I knew what to expect. The control room felt almost homey with the hum of the equipment and the soft glow from the monitors. I'd just finished my midnight readings and was halfway through an old paperback western I'd brought along. Nothing special, just a story to pass the time between hourly checks. The phone rang at 12:47 a.m. I jumped like I'd been shocked. The sound cut through the quiet so sharp it felt physical. We didn't get calls outside scheduled check-ins, and definitely not at this hour. My first thought was emergency, maybe something at McMurdo. My hand was already reaching for the receiver when I stopped. Something clicked in my brain, a memory. That crumpled paper. Never answer the phone between midnight and 3 a.m. My hand hovered over the phone. It kept ringing, loud and insistent. Could be important, could be an emergency, could be Duncan calling from her quarters with something urgent. But that rule, the way it was written, the certainty of it. I pulled my hand back and waited. The phone rang for exactly 30 seconds, then stopped mid-ring. Not like someone hung up, more like it was cut off. The silence after felt heavier than before. I stared at the phone. Maybe I should call McMurdo, check if they'd tried to reach us. But that would mean explaining why I didn't answer. And how do you tell your supervisor you didn't pick up because of some scribbled note you found? I went back to my book, but the words didn't stick. My eyes kept drifting to the phone, waiting for it to ring again. 20 minutes later, it did. This time it was louder, if that was possible. Not just in volume, but in presence. Each ring seemed to fill the room, bounce off the walls, and come back wrong. The sound stretched and warped, echoing through the station's metal corridors in a way that made no sense. Sound doesn't echo like that in small spaces with carpet and equipment. I sat frozen, counting the rings. 10, 20, 30. It kept going. Almost 2 minutes of ringing. No one rings that long. No one. When it finally stopped, I realized I'd been holding my breath. I got up, walked to the trash bin, and fished out that crumpled paper. I smoothed it against the desk, reading the rules again. They didn't seem like the ramblings of a crazy man anymore. 1. Never answer the phone between midnight and 3 a.m. 2. Lock your door at midnight. 3. If you see a man on the security cameras, watch him until he leaves. 4. Trust the blizzards. 5. Stay awake during your shift. I folded the paper carefully and put it in my pocket. The next night, I was ready. At 11:58 p.m., I did a final walkthrough of the station, checking windows and exterior doors even though nobody ever used them. At midnight exactly, I locked the main door, then the control room door, then my quarters, even though I wouldn't be in there until after my shift. Better safe than sorry. The night was quiet until 1:15 a.m. I was doing my hourly readings when I heard it, a knocking at the main entrance. Not loud, not pounding, just a normal knock like someone politely asking to come in. I froze, staring at the security monitors. The exterior camera showed nothing but darkness and swirling snow. Then a voice, a woman's voice, muffled through the door but clear enough. "Marcus? Marcus, are you in there? It's Opal." Opal Reese, my girlfriend from college, 15 years ago. "Marcus, please, I'm lost. I don't know how I got here. I'm freezing. Please let me in." I stood up, my heart hammering. This wasn't possible. Opal was in Seattle last I heard, married with kids. And she'd called me Marcus, not Clay. "Marcus, please, I can see the lights. I know you're in there. I'm so cold." I moved toward the main door without thinking, some old instinct to help kicking in. Her voice sounded so real, so frightened. Then I stopped, my hand on the lock. The nearest settlement was McMurdo Station, over 200 miles away. The last supply helicopter left days ago. There was no way, absolutely no way, anyone could be outside that door. "Marcus, why won't you help me? Don't you remember me? It's Opal, from Westlake College. We dated for 2 years. You gave me that silver bracelet for my birthday. Please, I'm dying out here." Details that matched, but it wasn't Opal. It couldn't be. "I'm calling McMurdo," I said, loud enough to be heard through the door. "They'll send help." There was a pause. Then, "No, don't call them. Just open the door, just for a minute. I just need to warm up." I backed away. "There's no one out there," I said, more to myself than whoever, whatever, was speaking. "Marcus, open this door." The voice changed, became shrill, desperate. "You can't leave me out here. You always do this. You always abandon people." I returned to the control room, closed and locked that door too. The voice continued, sometimes pleading, sometimes accusing. It knew things about me, not just Opal, but other details. My father Thomas, my sister Lisa in Denver, my mother Sarah. For an hour, the voice continued, begging, threatening, crying, screaming. Then, as suddenly as it started, it faded to silence. I didn't sleep that night, even after my shift ended. When Duncan came on duty, I didn't tell her what happened. What could I say that wouldn't sound crazy? Instead, I spent the day in my quarters with my tablet, researching everything I could find about Mario Hicks, the man who disappeared before me, the man whose name that thing outside had called me. The search results were limited with our restricted bandwidth, but I found enough. Mario Hicks, 31, meteorologist, vanished from Whitmore Station 3 weeks ago. Despite extensive search efforts involving helicopters, ground teams, and thermal imaging equipment, teams never found any trace of the missing man. I wasn't sleeping much anyway. Maybe 3-4 hours during the day, and even that was just lying there with my eyes closed, listening for anything that wasn't supposed to be there. The research on Mario Hicks didn't help. Guy just vanished. Poof. Like he walked out into that white nothing and became part of it. It was my 7th night at the station. I'd settled into a routine that wasn't exactly comfortable, but at least felt familiar. Check the instruments, log the readings, radio McMurdo, check the instruments again. The paper with the rules stayed folded in my breast pocket. I'd smooth it out sometimes, read those 5 lines, then fold it back up like some kind of ritual. I was logging the 2 a.m. readings when I caught it. Movement on monitor 3. Just a flicker at first. Could have been snow or static or my tired eyes playing tricks. But it wasn't. There was a man standing out there. Just standing. About 50 yards out, past the supply shed where the light barely reached. He wore no coat, no thermal gear. Just regular clothes, jeans, and what looked like a flannel shirt. At -40. And he was looking right at the camera. Right at me. I remembered rule number 3. If you see a man on the security cameras, watch him until he leaves. Okay, I said to the empty control room. I'm watching. I didn't get up to check the other monitors. Didn't reach for the radio. Just kept my eyes fixed on that screen. The man didn't move, not even a sway or a shift of weight. Nobody stands that still, especially not in that cold. They'd be shivering, moving, dying. But he just stood there, staring. My eyes started to burn after 20 minutes. I blinked hard, quick. When I looked back, he was in the same spot, same position, not a hair different. What do you want? I asked the screen. No answer, just that steady stare. After an hour, I thought about calling Duncan, waking her up, having her come see. But I remembered Mario Hicks, the way he'd disappeared, the voice that had called me by his name. The rules said, watch until he leaves, not call for help, not go out there, just watch. So I watched. My hourly readings came and went. I logged them one-handed, keeping my eyes on the monitor. The man didn't move. 2 hours in, my back was stiff and my neck felt like concrete, but I didn't look away. You can stand there all night, I told the screen. I'm not going anywhere. 3 hours and 17 minutes after I first spotted him, the man moved. Not a gradual motion. 1 second he was frozen, the next he was turning, smooth and deliberate, until his back faced the camera. Then he walked straight away from the station, his pace even, until the darkness swallowed him. I stared at the empty screen for another 10 minutes before I finally let myself lean back. My shirt was soaked with sweat despite the climate control. My eyes felt like they'd been rubbed with sand. What the hell was that? I whispered to nobody. The next night it was the phone again. Started at midnight sharp and rang for 45 minutes straight. I sat with my hands over my ears, repeating the weather data like a mantra. Barometric pressure 29.73 inches, wind speed 27 knots, temperature -42 Fahrenheit, relative humidity 42%. The third night the knocking came back, but it wasn't just Opal's voice anymore. There were others. Marcus, called a deep voice I recognized immediately, my father's voice. Son, I need your help out here. My father had been dead for 8 years. Dad, I said before I could stop myself. Then I shook my head. You're not my father. Marcus, please, the voice continued. It's so cold. I just need to come in for a minute. I pressed my back against the far wall of the control room. My father is dead. I know you're confused, son, the voice said. But it's me. It's really me. Open the door. It sounded exactly like him. That slight gravel in the tone. The way he'd say son with the faintest emphasis. Willie Montgomery died of a heart attack in 2015, I said loudly. You're not him. There was a pause. Then, Marcus, why are you doing this to me after everything I did for you? I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor. You're not real. The voice changed then, turned angry in a way my father's voice used to when I was a kid and had pushed him too far. You ungrateful little shit. Open this goddamn door right now. I covered my ears, but it didn't help. The voices now, went on for hours. My father, Opal, someone who sounded like my old boss from the weather service. They pleaded, they threatened, they wept. By the fourth night, I was barely holding it together. The phone would ring for hours. The voices would start right after. Sometimes the man would appear on the cameras, standing motionless in the snow. I'd watch him until he left, then collapse into a chair, exhausted. During my days, I'd try to sleep, but couldn't. Instead, I started searching the station, looking for anything Mario might have left behind, anything that could tell me what was happening. I found the first note taped to the underside of the sink in the bathroom, just a scrap of paper with hurried writing. They can't touch you, stay inside, stay awake. The second was wedged behind the refrigerator in the kitchen. They know who you are. They know everything about you. I kept searching. In the storage closet, behind a stack of toilet paper, I found it. a spiral notebook with property of Mario Hicks written on the cover. It was a journal. The first entries were normal enough. Weather observations, complaints about the food, notes about calls with family back home. Then they changed. Day 37. Phone rang at 12:17 a.m., didn't answer. Rang for 32 minutes. Day 38. Phone again, also knocking. Woman's voice. Said she was my mother. My mother is in Phoenix. Called her during day shift to confirm. Day 41. Man on camera tonight. Stood there for 2 hours, 17 minutes. Looked like my brother. My brother is in Seattle. Day 45. They don't leave anymore. Voices all night. Can't sleep during day. Too afraid. Day 49. Found rules left by Chen. Following them now. Too late. The entries got shorter, more frantic. The handwriting deteriorated. The final entry was dated 3 days before my arrival. Can't do this anymore. 3 nights no sleep. They're always there now. Always watching. Always talking. Chen's rules don't help anymore. Nothing helps. Maybe if I sleep they'll leave me alone. Just need to close my eyes. Just for a little while. Rule 5 says stay awake, but I can't. I can't. I can't. I'm sorry. I closed the journal and sat on the floor of the storage closet. The last entry revealed Chen's desperate plan to ignore the 5th rule and allow himself to sleep, believing unconsciousness would provide escape from the torment that had become unbearable. I found Mario's journal and sat there in the storage closet for I don't know how long. The pages told me everything I needed to know about what happened to him, about what might happen to me. I tucked the journal inside my jacket and made my way back to the control room. My legs felt heavy, not from sitting too long in that closet, but from knowing what I know now. I'd been at Whitmore Station 14 days, 2 weeks of hell that kept getting worse. The phone calls, the voices, the man in the snow, all of it following the same pattern Mario wrote about, the same pattern that got Chen before him. When I got back to the control desk, the satellite weather system was blinking red. I'd missed the alert while reading the journal. I pulled up the report and felt something I hadn't felt in days. Relief. Severe blizzard warning. Projected duration, 72 plus hours. Winds 55-70 mph. Whiteout conditions expected. I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't seeing things. My eyes were shot from lack of sleep, burning like someone had thrown sand in them. Trust the blizzards, I whispered, remembering Rule 4. I radioed McMurdo with the standard evening check-in, keeping my voice steady while reporting the incoming storm. The operator just confirmed and reminded me of standard blizzard protocols, like I hadn't been through a dozen Antarctic storms before. What he didn't know was I wasn't dreading this one. I was waiting for it. The storm hit around midnight. I stood at the small window in the control room, watching the first heavy bands of snow sweep across the station. The wind picked up fast, howling against the metal walls. Within an hour, visibility dropped to nothing, just white swirling chaos out there. And then I noticed it. Midnight had come and gone. The phone hadn't rung. I checked my watch. 12:47 a.m. Nothing. No calls, no voices, no knocking. I kept working, checking instruments, logging data. Every few minutes I'd glance at the phone, expecting it to burst into that shrill ring, but it stayed quiet. The camera showed nothing but snow, no man standing out there watching me. By 3 a.m., I was sure. The storm was keeping them away, whatever they were. I don't know why I did it, but I walked to the main entrance and pressed my ear against the door. Nothing but the storm. No voices calling my name or pretending to be people I knew, just wind and ice. For the first time since I'd arrived, I felt something close to safe. I finished my shift and handed over to Duncan at 8 a.m. She noticed something different about me. "You look almost human today, Stark," she said, sipping her coffee. "Get some actual sleep?" "Storm's helping," I said. Didn't tell her why. Back in my quarters, I locked the door out of habit, even though I knew I wouldn't need it today. I lay down on my bunk without changing clothes, Mario's journal tucked under my mattress. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in 2 weeks, I slept without fear. I slept for 10 hours straight. No nightmares, no voices, just darkness and rest. The blizzard lasted 3 days, 3 days of blessed normalcy. I did my job. I ate. I slept. The phone never rang outside schedule. The security cameras showed nothing but snow. No voices called from outside. I knew it wouldn't last. On the morning of the 4th day, the storm broke. I watched through the control room window as the sky cleared, revealing that endless Antarctic blue. Beautiful if you didn't know what was coming. That night, it all came back, worse than before. The phone started at midnight on the dot and didn't stop until 3 a.m. Not the 30 seconds or 2 minutes from before. 3 solid hours of ringing. I tried covering my ears with headphones playing music, but I could still hear it, like the sound was inside my head. The voices started at 1 a.m., not waiting for me to finish readings this time. Dozens of them, all at once, calling from every side of the station. I couldn't make out individual words at first, just a chorus of pleading and threats. Then I heard her, my mother, Jessica Aguilar. "Marcus, baby, please, it's Mom. I need to see you." I froze at the monitoring station. My mother lived in Albuquerque. She called me twice a month, complained about the heat, asked when I was coming home. She'd never called me baby in my life. "I know you're in there, Marcus. Please open the door. I'm so cold out here." I gripped the edge of the desk until my knuckles turned white. "You're not my mother," I said to the empty room. "Marcus Thompson, you open this door right now." The voice had my mother's exact tone when she was angry, the slight accent on certain words. "I raised you better than this." I checked the cameras. The blizzard had left huge drifts around the station, but the main entrance was clear enough to see. No one was there, just voices from nothing. More came. My sister, my father, dead 5 years now. Old friends from college. Each one knew things only they should know. Each one begged me to open the door. On the security monitor, I counted 6 different people standing in the snow. One was the same man I'd seen before, still wearing just jeans and a flannel shirt. The others were new. A woman in a sundress, an old man with a cane, a child holding a teddy bear, all perfectly still, all staring directly at the camera. I stayed in my chair for hours, watching them, following Rule 3. By morning, I was a wreck. My eyes felt like they were filled with glass. My hands shook so bad I could barely type the weather readings. I'd gone through an entire pot of coffee and 4 energy drinks. When Duncan arrived, I didn't even try to act normal. "Jesus, Stark, you look like hell," she said, reaching for my shoulder. I flinched away. "Bad night. You need to sleep. Doctor's orders." "Can't," I said. I will. Later." I didn't sleep, not that day or the next. The pattern repeated each night. Phone calls, voices, figures in the snow, more of them each time. The 5th rule kept echoing in my head: stay awake. I started seeing things even during the day, shadows moving in empty corridors, whispers from the ventilation system. I couldn't tell anymore what was real and what was my brain shutting down from exhaustion. The coffee stopped working. The energy drinks just made my heart race and my hands shake worse. I started slapping myself, hard to stay alert, pinching the skin between my thumb and finger until it bruised. On my 19th day at the station, I was changing my sheets when I noticed something on the metal frame of my bunk. Writing carved into the metal with what must have been a knife or screwdriver. I leaned in close, running my fingers over the jagged letters. "Chen tried to escape during blizzard. Froze 50 yards from door. They still got him. Match." Mario's last message, telling me even the blizzards weren't a real escape, just temporary protection. I sank to the floor beside my bunk, staring at those scratched letters until they blurred. Chen had tried to run and died in the snow. Mario had tried to sleep and disappeared. And me? I was running out of options fast. I'd been awake for almost 72 hours straight. The hallucinations were getting worse. Sometimes I'd blink and find myself in a different part of the station with no memory of walking there. The rules weren't helping anymore. Nothing was. Chen tried to escape during a blizzard but died in the attempt. I knew I was out of options. My brain felt like it was wrapped in static, every thought fighting to get through the fog. 3 days without sleep will do that to you. I had to get out of this place. Now. I forced myself up from the floor, my joints popping like I was 30 years older than my actual 35. The carved message on my bunk frame seemed to pulse in the dim light. Chen tried to escape during blizzard. Froze 50 yards from door. They still got him. Mage. Chen died running. Mario disappeared sleeping. I wasn't about to try either of those routes. I stumbled to the control room, catching myself on the wall twice when my vision blurred. The station's constant hum seemed to mock me, like it knew exactly what was happening and didn't care. I dropped into the chair at the comm station, my hands shaking so bad I had to press them flat against the metal desk. The radio schedule said McMurdo wouldn't be expecting a check-in for another 4 hours. Too bad for them. I flipped the switches, adjusted the frequency, and keyed the mic. Whitmore Station to McMurdo Base. Emergency transmission. Over. Static crackled. I waited 30 seconds and tried again. Whitmore Station to McMurdo Base. This is Marcus Thompson. Emergency transmission. Please respond. More static. Then a voice cut through. McMurdo Base to Whitmore Station. This is Communications Officer Patel. You're off schedule, Thompson. What's your emergency? I swallowed hard. I needed to sound normal, rational. I need to speak with Base Commander Hawkins immediately. Commander's in a meeting. State nature of emergency. Medical, personal. Need to speak with Hawkins directly. A pause. Stand by. The radio went silent. I drummed my fingers on the desk, watching the second hand on the wall clock tick by. 5 minutes. 10. The silence stretched out until I was about to key the mic again when it crackled to life. Whitmore Station, this is Commander Hawkins. What's the nature of your emergency, Thompson? I took a deep breath. Sir, I need immediate evacuation. Medical situation. What kind of medical situation? His voice was flat, professional. I'd met him during orientation. Tall guy, military background, not the type to spook easily. I believe it's my appendix, sir. The lie came easily. Severe pain in my lower right abdomen, nausea, fever. Have you consulted with Duncan? She's sleeping, sir, and she's not medical staff. We have protocols for suspected appendicitis. Have you taken your temperature? Shit, I hadn't thought that far ahead. 101, sir. And the pain? Scale of 1 to 10? 7, sir. Getting worse. Any vomiting? Yes, sir. Twice in the past hour. Another pause. I could almost see him weighing the situation. Appendicitis was serious enough to warrant evacuation, but not so serious that he'd scramble a helicopter right this second. Thompson, we're in the middle of a supply rotation. All aircraft are committed for the next 24 hours. I can have a medical evacuation to you in 48 hours at the earliest. 48 hours? My voice cracked. 2 more nights. 2 more nights of them. That's the best I can do. Weather looks clear for the next 3 days. You'll need to manage symptoms until then. I'll have Dr. Suarez radio you with instructions for pain management and monitoring. I wanted to scream. Tell him what was really happening. But what would I say? There are things outside that know my name. There are voices that sound like my dead father. I see things on the cameras that shouldn't be there. I'd be pulled from duty for psych evaluation, not evacuation. Yes, sir. Understood. We'll have the helicopter to you by 0900 on Thursday. Try to rest and stay hydrated. Hawkins out. The radio went silent. I sat there, the reality sinking in. 48 hours, 2 more nights. I looked at the clock. It was just past noon. That meant 2 full night shifts with them. I rested my head in my hands. I could make it. I had to make it. Dr. Suarez called an hour later with instructions I barely heard. Take ibuprofen. Apply cold compress. Monitor temperature. Call if pain increases. I wrote it all down like I was really going to do it. I didn't tell Duncan when she came on shift. Didn't want to answer questions about symptoms I didn't have. Just said I was feeling under the weather, might sleep through dinner. She looked concerned, but didn't push it. Back in my quarters, I pulled Mario's journal from under the mattress and flipped through it again, looking for anything that might help me survive 2 more nights. His entries got shorter toward the end, more frantic. The handwriting deteriorated from neat block letters to jagged scrawls. Day 47. They know when you're weak. They can smell it. Like sharks with blood in the water. That's what I was now. Blood in the water. And they knew it. I set 3 alarms to wake me at 6 p.m., though I doubted I'd sleep. Tucked the rules paper in my breast pocket. Checked and double-checked my door lock. Laid down fully dressed. Somehow, I slept. Not well, not deep, but enough that when the alarms blared, I jerked awake with a gasp. My mouth tasted like copper pennies. My eyes felt like they'd been rolled in sand. Duncan didn't comment on my appearance when I relieved her, just gave me a worried look and reminded me the satellite phone was working if I needed medical advice overnight. As soon as she left, I locked the main entrance door. Then, the control room door. I pulled a chair from the break room and wedged it under the control room doorknob. The station's heating system clicked on, making me jump. I did the first readings at 9 p.m. All normal. Outside temperature -38, wind 9 knots, stars visible through patchy high clouds. At midnight, the phone rang. I'd been expecting it. but it still made me flinch. The sound was different this time, louder, more insistent. I covered my ears, but it didn't help. The ringing seemed to vibrate through the metal walls, through the floor, up through my bones. An hour passed. 2. The ringing continued without pause. I tried Duncan's headphones, a set of earplugs I found in a drawer, even tore strips from a t-shirt to stuff in my ears. Nothing worked. At 2:17 a.m., I snapped. I yanked the phone cord from the wall socket with enough force that the whole unit clattered to the floor. The ringing stopped. The silence felt physical, like pressure against my eardrums. I stood there, breathing hard, staring at the disconnected phone. Then I heard the knocking. Not at the main entrance this time. At the control room door, the one right behind me. The one I'd locked and barricaded. Marcus. A woman's voice, not Duncan's. Softer, familiar in a way I couldn't place. Marcus, please. I know you're in there. I didn't answer. Kept my back to the door, eyes fixed on the instrument panel. It's cold out here, Marcus. So cold. Please let me in. I squeezed my eyes shut. You're not real, I whispered. I'm as real as you are. The voice changed, deepened. My father. Son, open this door, now. Then another voice, a child's. Uncle Marcus, I'm scared. I'd never been called uncle in my life. More voices joined in, a chorus of them, overlapping. Men, women, children. Some called me Marcus, some called me Mario, some called me David or Chen. They begged, they threatened, they cried. I forced myself to focus on the instrument readings. Barometric pressure, 29.82 inches. Wind speed, 11 knots. Temperature, -40 Fahrenheit. The security monitors caught my eye. The exterior cameras showed figures. Not 1 or 6 like before, dozens. Standing in the snow, perfectly still, all facing the station. Men, women, children. Some in summer clothes, some in winter gear, some in what looked like hospital gowns. All staring directly at the cameras. One stood apart from the others. A man in jeans and a flannel shirt, the one I'd first seen. He raised his hand slowly and pointed at the camera. We're waiting for you, the voices said in unison from behind the door. We've been waiting so long. I bit down on my knuckle until I tasted blood. The pain cleared my head a little. They weren't real. They couldn't be real. Real people would freeze in seconds out there. Real people would have shown up on McMurdo's thermal scans when they searched for Chen and Mario. But they knew things. They knew names, details, memories. I dragged my eyes away from the monitors and focused on my breathing. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. A technique I'd learned during a panic attack in college. The voices continued all night. The figures remained on the cameras. I stayed in my chair, reciting instrument readings like a prayer. When Duncan arrived at 8 a.m., the voices stopped mid-sentence. The monitors showed only empty snow. I didn't tell her what happened, just mumbled something about a rough night with my appendicitis and shuffled off to my quarters. I wanted to tell her, wanted to warn her, but what good would it do now? The helicopter was coming tomorrow. She'd be fine during the day. They only came at night. I tried to sleep but couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those figures standing in the snow. I read Mario's journal again instead, focusing on the entries from his final days. Day 48. I can't stay awake anymore. My body's shutting down. Maybe if I just sleep for an hour, just 1 hour. Day 49. Found Chen's rules. Too late for me. Left them for the next person. Hope they help. Final entry. They're at every door now. Every window. Watching. Waiting. I'm so tired. I just want to sleep. Just for a little while. If you're reading this, I'm sorry. I tried. Stay awake. Stay inside. They can't touch you if you follow the rules. That night was worse. Much worse. The phone I'd disconnected started ringing again at midnight. Impossibly, unnaturally. The voices came from every direction. Not just the doors, but the vents, the walls, even seeming to rise from the floor beneath my feet. They overlapped, creating a cacophony that made it impossible to think. The monitors showed more figures than I could count, surrounding the station completely. They stood shoulder to shoulder, a wall of watching eyes. I retreated to the corner of the control room, wedging myself between a filing cabinet and the wall. I kept the rules paper clutched in my hand, reading it over and over. 1. Never answer the phone between midnight and 3 a.m. 2. Lock your door at midnight. 3. If you see a man on the security cameras, Watch him until he leaves. 4. Trust the blizzards. 5. Stay awake during your shift. I followed them all. I hadn't answered the phone. I'd locked the doors. I watched the figures on the cameras. There were no blizzards to trust. And I stayed awake. God, I stayed awake. But they were getting stronger, or I was getting weaker. Several times I found myself standing at the door, hand on the lock, with no memory of crossing the room. Once I came to with my finger hovering over the button that would unlock the main entrance. Another time I was at the exterior door, my hand on the thermal handle. I resorted to desperate measures. I found a roll of duct tape and taped my left wrist to the arm of the control chair. I taped the rules paper to the back of my right hand. I dug my fingernails into my palms until they left bloody half-moons. The night stretched on endlessly. The voices never stopped. Sometimes they were angry, screaming obscenities and threats. Sometimes they were heartbreakingly sad, weeping and pleading. Worst were the reasonable ones, the calm voices explaining logically why I should open the door, why I should trust them, why I should sleep. We're not what you think, Marcus. We can help you. You're sick. You need rest. Just open the door and it all stops. By 7 a.m. I was a wreck. My throat was raw from screaming back at them. My wrist was bruised where I'd pulled against the tape. My hands trembled so badly I couldn't type the final readings. When Duncan arrived, the voices stopped, the monitors cleared. I peeled the tape from my wrist, wincing at the raw skin beneath. Jesus, Marcus. She stared at me. You look terrible. What happened to your wrist? Accident, I mumbled. Helicopter's coming tomorrow, right? 0900. Commander Hawkins confirmed last night. She put a hand on my shoulder. You need to sleep. You're in no condition. No, I jerked away. No sleep. I'm fine. She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes, but she didn't argue. I spent the day in a haze, alternating between packing my few belongings and reading Mario's journal for the 100th time. I kept checking the clock, counting down the hours until the helicopter arrived. That night, my last night, was the worst by far. It started the same way. Midnight, phone ringing, voices, figures on the cameras. But there was a desperation to them now. They knew I was leaving. They knew this was their last chance. The voices grew so loud I couldn't hear myself think. The figures pressed closer to the station, some right up against the exterior walls. I could see their faces clearly on the monitors. Men, women, children of all ages. Some looked normal. Others had something wrong with them. Eyes too wide, mouths too large, limbs at odd angles. I barricaded myself in the control room again, this time pushing the desk against the door along with 2 chairs. I taped both wrists to the arms of my chair. I put on headphones, playing static at full volume to drown out the voices. It wasn't enough. I kept finding myself free of the tape, standing at various doors. Once I came to at the exterior door, my hand on the thermal handle, the voices a soothing whisper. Just step outside, just for a moment. See, the helicopter can't land in this weather. But when I looked at the monitors, the sky was clear, stars shining, no storm. They were lying. I stumbled back to the control room, retaped my wrists, and waited for dawn. The hours crawled by. 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. At 6:17 a.m., I heard the most beautiful sound in the world, the distant thump, thump, thump of helicopter blades. The voices screamed in fury. The figures on the monitors scattered, retreating from the station. I ripped the tape from my wrists and ran to the main entrance, fumbling with the locks. Through the small window, I could see the helicopter descending, kicking up snow in a white cloud. Duncan appeared beside me, pulling on her coat. They're early. I didn't question it. Didn't care. They were here. We pushed through the door into the biting cold. The helicopter settled onto the pad 50 yards away, its rotors still spinning. 2 figures jumped out, a woman in a pilot's jumpsuit and a man carrying a medical bag. They ran toward us, hunched against the rotor wash. "Marcus Thompson," the woman shouted over the noise. "I'm Rosie Sanders, your pilot. This is Larry Quinn, medic." I nodded, not trusting my voice. Quinn looked me over, his expression professional but concerned. "Can you walk to the helicopter, or do you need assistance?" "I can walk." My voice sounded strange, hoarse from screaming. "We need to move quickly," Sanders said, weather windows closing faster than expected. Duncan helped me with my bag. I clutched Mario's journal inside my jacket. The rules paper was still taped to the back of my hand. We trudged through the snow to the helicopter. Quinn helped me climb in, strapping me into a seat. Duncan passed my bag up, gave me a worried smile, and stepped back. The rotors sped up. Sanders' voice came through my headset. Lifting off in 3, 2, 1. The helicopter rose smoothly. I pressed my face to the window, watching the station shrink below us. The relief was so intense it made me dizzy. That's when I saw it. A lone figure standing in the snow, looking up at the helicopter. Not one of the dozens from the night before. Just one. A man in a flannel shirt and jeans, perfectly still despite the rotor wash that should have been battering him. He raised his hand slowly and pointed directly at me. I never set foot in Antarctica again. Sent my resignation to the National Weather Service 2 days after we touched down at McMurdo. Paperwork said personal reasons, and nobody pushed it. The doc who checked me over had seen it before. Guys coming in from remote stations with that 1,000-yard stare, hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Post-traumatic stress, she called it. Wrote me a prescription for something to help me sleep. I threw it in the trash soon as I got back to the States. Sleep wasn't the problem. Staying awake was. First couple months back home were rough. Got myself a small apartment in Denver, not far from my sister Lisa. 1 bedroom, thin walls, noisy neighbors. Perfect. The less quiet, the better. Kept Mario's journal and that folded piece of paper with Chen's rules. Taped the rules to my bathroom mirror for a while, then moved them to my wallet when I realized the cleaning lady was giving me funny looks. Lisa tried to help. Invited me for dinner twice a week, introduced me to friends, found job listings. Think she was hoping I'd talk about what happened down there. I never did. You know you can tell me anything, right? She'd say. I'd nod and change the subject. Some things you can't explain to people who haven't seen them, and some things you shouldn't try to explain, because putting them into words makes them more real somehow. Got a job working security at a shopping mall, night shift of course. Spent my days with the blinds open and the TV on. Sometimes I'd doze off for 20 minutes, but never longer. Body got used to it after a while. The phone calls started about 3 months after I got back, always between midnight and 3 in the morning. I'd stare at the ringing phone, counting the seconds, waiting for it to stop. Never lasted more than 30 seconds. Never left a message. I got caller ID. The number was always different. Sometimes it showed unknown. Sometimes it showed numbers that didn't exist. Changed my number twice. Didn't help. The knocking started a month later. Always when I was alone. Always 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. I'd press my eye to the peephole and see an empty hallway. Told myself it was just the neighbors, or the pipes, or my mind playing tricks. But I knew better. Called Commander Foster at McMurdo once, about 6 months after I left, just to ask about Whitmore Station. It's been unmanned, he said. Budget cuts. We've got automated systems handling the readings. He paused. I could hear him choosing his words carefully. There's talk of sending someone back in next month. Don't, I said. Another pause. The investigation into what happened with Chen and Hicks didn't turn up anything conclusive. There won't be anything to find, I said. Thompson, he said, using my real name. If there's something you want to tell me. I hung up. Got an email from Duncan a week later. Said they'd found a replacement. Some guy named Ramirez, Weather Service veteran, 20 years experience. I didn't write back. Started having these dreams where I'd see Ramirez sitting at that control desk. He'd be staring at the monitors, watching the man in the flannel shirt standing in the snow. And somehow, in the dream, I'd know it was 3 in the morning, and Ramirez had been awake for days, and his hand was reaching for the door lock. I'd wake up yelling. The neighbors complained. Landlord gave me a warning. I bought earplugs for them, left them in their mailboxes with a note apologizing. Didn't explain why I screamed in my sleep. Foster called again, 8 months after I left. Said Ramirez had disappeared, just like Chen, just like Hicks. Did he leave any notes? I asked. Nothing we could find, Foster said. Did you? I hung up again. That night I took out Mario's journal and read it cover to cover. Then I read Chen's rules again, though I knew them by heart. 1. Never answer the phone between midnight and 3 a.m. 2. Lock your door at midnight. 3. If you see a man on the security cameras, watch him until he leaves. 4. Trust the blizzards. 5. Stay awake during your shift. Simple rules, life-saving rules. Rules that Mario had learned from Chen, who'd learned them too late. Rules that Mario had left for me and that I hadn't left for Ramirez. I wondered if Ramirez had found the carving on the bunk frame, if he'd understood what it meant, if he'd tried to run during a blizzard, like Chen, or if he'd given in to exhaustion, like Mario. Got another job after the mall let me go. Night watchman at a warehouse. Boss didn't ask questions about why I preferred nights, just handed me the keys and the alarm codes. I kept track of Whitmore Station through weather service bulletins I could still access with my old login. The readings came through like clockwork, all automated now. Sometimes I'd stare at those numbers, barometric pressure, wind speed, temperature, humidity, and try to picture the empty control room, the silent phone, the dark corridors. And I'd wonder if they were still there, standing in the snow, watching the station, waiting. Duncan emailed sometimes, said they'd stopped trying to staff Whitmore. Too many incidents. Budget cuts made a convenient excuse. I never told her what I saw from the helicopter that day. Never told anyone about the man in the flannel shirt pointing up at me as we lifted off. The one thing that still wakes me up in a cold sweat. That finger aimed right at me like he was saying, I know who you are. I know where you are. And this isn't over. One night, about a year after Antarctica, I was doing my rounds at the warehouse when my phone rang. 3 a.m. on the dot. I let it ring. 30 seconds, then silence. Then knocking. From inside the warehouse. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. I sat in the security office watching the monitors. Nothing moved on the screens. But the knocking continued. Then a voice. My father's voice, though he'd been dead for years. Marcus, it said. Open the door, son. I pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The voice was inside my head now. They're still waiting for you, my father's voice said. At Whitmore. They're always waiting. I squeezed my eyes shut. You're not real, I whispered. Neither are you, the voice said, and laughed. When I opened my eyes, the warehouse monitors showed a man standing in aisle 7, jeans and a flannel shirt, staring directly at the camera. I watched him until morning, just like the rules said. When the day shift arrived, he was gone. Changed jobs again after that, changed apartments too, moved to a busier part of town, more people, more noise, took day shifts only, slept in short bursts at night with the lights on, but they always found me. The phone, the knocking, the voices, the man on security cameras or standing across the street or reflected in windows when I turned just right. I keep Mario's journal and Chen's rules close. They saved my life once, might save it again. Sometimes I wonder about the next person who will end up at Whitmore Station, whether they'll find Mario's journal or Chen's rules or my fingerprints on the control desk, whether they'll hear the phone ringing at midnight or the voices outside the door or see the man in the snow. Whether they'll understand, as I finally did, that some places harbor forces beyond human comprehension. Patient forces, ancient forces, forces that don't forget and don't forgive. I survived by following instructions from a man who learned too late, who passed his knowledge to me like a torch in the darkness. But physical distance doesn't equal safety. Not really. Whatever waits at Whitmore Station continues its patient vigil in the Antarctic darkness, perhaps already testing the resolve of the station's newest occupant.